Oh, nice. That is real nice. I get to zoom in as I go live on my Spreaker.
Now don't forget a loaf of bread, a container of milk, and a stick of butter. If you can't remember, I'll write it down for you.
That's okay, Mommy. I won't forget. I'll remember. A loaf of bread, a container of milk, and a stick of butter. A loaf of bread, a container of milk, and a stick of butter. A loaf of bread, a container of milk, and a stick of butter. A loaf of bread, a container of milk, and a stick of butter. A loaf of bread, a container of milk, and a stick of butter. A loaf of bread, a container of milk, and a stick of butter. Mister, can I have a loaf of bread, a container of milk, and gee, I can't remember. Can you remember what my mommy said?
A loaf of bread, a container of milk, and a stick of butter.
A stick of butter. I remembered. Mommy, I remember. A loaf of bread, a container of milk, and a stick of butter.
You have a good memory, honey.
Thank you, Mommy.
Now don't...
All right, thank you for joining me on my show. I still call it the Michael Tobin Show, but I also have another name called the Naomi Report, and I explained that in previous podcasts. And it's based on Naomi in the book of Ruth. And after the years of drought and famine, she comes back home, and they recognize her and say, "Hey, you're Naomi." And she says, "Don't call me Naomi, but call me Mara." And Mara means bitter. It's mentioned 2 times in the Bible, and it means bitter waters. First time was Moses, when he threw the stick in the water to make it fresh because the water was bitter, but he called it bitter waters. And we know from reading the book of Ruth that Naomi didn't actually change her name to Mara, but it remains Naomi. And guess what Naomi means? Naomi means a delight. So Naomi is an awesome name. And I also used that in my title of my book called Making America Righteous Again, From Bitterness to a Delight. And it was first published on January 1st of 2016. And so you could go to Amazon.com and just look up Making America Righteous Again. Or you could type in my name, actually, along with my name, Michael D. Tobin, and you'll see it. It's about $4.73, I believe, and it's e-publication. It's not yet in print. But today's broadcast, I hope it is of really beneficial to you. And for the past whole week, I've been wanting to discuss secret social media platforms in China, and I got the link from my friend, and I actually did a web search on Ding Dash, and I didn't find anything except for my friend. He's a personal friend. I haven't met him personally. I missed him at a ministry where a friend of his, a Chinese Christian, was a guest speaker here in San Diego County. And but I actually interviewed him, and I will be migrating past interviews and past podcasts onto my new account on Spreaker. I discontinued a previous account and I created a new account, but I have them all on files, and I will be migrating those shows as I am able to have more than 45 minutes, which is what I'm it's a minimal subscription right now for like $6 a month or something like that. But I desire to have at least a 5-hour possibility of airtime, and that requires a yearly subscription or a monthly subscription. But with public support, I can easily do that, and I can quit my day job and go to places that's only 200 miles away from me or 10 miles away. But I am limited, I am prohibited from doing so because I had a Monday through Friday, sometimes Saturdays type of a job. And so my desire, I always mention it and I always put it in my information how you can help. Twitter is not Twitter. PayPal is like the easiest way to do things. But the title of today's podcast, what did I literally title it? What did I title it? Well, secret social media platforms in China and Southern California earthquake updates. That's what the show is about today. And I will have links to LA Times, or go to latimes.com for the latest. I scoured the internet for at least 3 hours, and I called a fire station in Trona, California, and I'm mainly focusing on Trona because Trona is 11 miles from Ridgecrest, which is getting the majority of help, support, and attention. But there's about 11,000 people in Trona, which is 11 miles northeast of Ridgecrest. I lived in both of those towns. Trona began as a mining town. They have borax, lithium, all kinds of minerals. And it began as a mining town, which the mine owners had houses built for the workers, and it has grown, and it's an awesome town. They have gem societies there, which doubles the population every year of that town just for the gems, the gem show. And I've been to one of them when I was there. I raised my children for several years there. And in Ridgecrest, which is in Kern County, Trona is in San Bernardino County, which San Bernardino County is the largest county in the United States. And it is a long ways from anywhere with a major population from Trona, but the nearest population from Trona is only 11 miles away, but it is in a different county, so you can see that there are, pardon the term, roadblocks to cooperation and help. And what is making this earthquake situation very difficult is a section of the Highway 178 between Trona and Ridgecrest. It's blocked off because you're literally traveling through canyons, and it's only a 2-lane highway. There's rock slides and there's photos of rocks and boulders all over the highway, so it really is impassable unless you have a big, humongous 4-wheel drive. You could get through, and I don't know if they're letting certain people through for various reasons or not. But I did call the fire station number 57 in Trona this morning, and I wanted to go through these social media things, but I'll do that after this, and I'm going to try to do this as much justice as possible. So I'll play for you the recording of the phone call, and I introduced myself as a podcaster also. So I'll play for you the short conversation I had with a a guy named Sean at the fire station. And the reason why I called them out was wanted to find out if Trona is actually getting help, because it's 1:31 p.m. right now Pacific time, Saturday, July 6th. Yesterday is when a 7.1 earthquake happened, which was about 10 times worse than the 6.4 earthquake that happened on Independence Day, July 4th. And I read that there's a 5% chance that there will be a larger earthquake than 7.1. And they already predicted that that is possible, a certain percentage possibility that a larger than the 6.4 would occur, and sure enough, a day later it did. So we are really in prayer for California, especially, and many parts of the United States, especially, as well, as these disasters are occurring. But I'm a chaplain with the Billy Graham Rapid Response Team, and I've went to various states for hurricanes as well as 2 fires in my own county in California, San Diego County, between 2003 and now. And I've also went to Sacramento, our capital city of California, March 31st of 2016. And that was with Franklin Graham's West Coast Prayer Tour. He went California, Oregon, and Washington State. And then just last year, on May 20th, 2018, he was just 5 miles away from me, and I still haven't met Franklin Graham yet, but I volunteered there also as a chaplain. So that was my last thing that I actually did with the Billy Graham Rapid Response Team. It's awesome events, but I don't want to bore you, but my desire, as I said earlier, is to quit my day job and be able to go and be anywhere giving you accurate and quality information. And right now it's kind of raw because I scour the internet, get ideas, put it together like notes, and present it to you. But the conversation I had with Sean, it is right here.
Fire, 657, this is Sean.
Good morning, Sean. My name is Michael Tobin. I'm a local area podcaster, and I've lived in Trona for years, raised my children there, went to school in Ridgecrest. So I'm calling about how the things are going in Trona right now. Has the water situation and electricity been taken care of since they were turned off?
Could you hold on for a second for me?
Okay. And Sean does come back momentarily, so here he comes.
Okay, yeah, the electric got back on right about daybreak this morning.
Okay, and is water being freely transported from Ridgecrest or any other parts of San Bernardino County into Trona?
Not like, per se, like transported in tanks, but we have bottled water to give out to the community and whatnot.
Okay. And I understand that buildings are being assessed and everything, but other than that, the people they're afraid to be in their homes or they're sleeping outside, they're being provided for in various ways.
Oh yes.
Okay. Yep. Okay. All right.
Yeah,
that's all I wanted to know. My trick is trying to find somebody that I could actually ask a question and get an answer from. So I appreciate you, Sean.
Okay. You're welcome. You bet.
Thank you very much.
Have a good day. Bye.
So that was sort of a softball question, and I didn't want to take up too much of his time, but my concern, of course, was is water being provided for? And Highway 178, it goes from Trona to Ridgecrest. That is the one that is blocked. But there is another way that Trona can get traffic through a road that we call Red Mountain Road. And that goes from Highway 395 to 178, and then you turn to go northeast towards Trona. So I'm not exactly sure. I believe that is the only way. And so as you get off of Red Mountain Road, you're going to run into that area that is blocked off. So this is a tragic situation, and it is something that you just do not want to happen. And the worst of things that could happen, it did happen. And it's just amazing. If you continue going northeast out of Trona, there's only one way in and one way out. You go through it, and if you keep on going 70 miles down the road, literally down, is the lowest point in the United States, which is Death Valley. And there isn't anything that's going to be coming from there to help any situation. But they do have water, which is good news. The electricity was turned on at daybreak this morning, which is very good news. The people are afraid there, of course, because as we're speaking, there may have already been a larger earthquake. I don't know. But as I said earlier, 5% chance that a larger quake may happen. So it's just sad. And I remember going to school in Ridgecrest. I'm 55 years old. I was about 30 years old when I went to junior college in Ridgecrest, Saracoso Community College, and got my 2-year degree. I remember being in the library and out of curiosity looking up what is Ridgecrest's emergency plan, and it is probably a half-inch stack of papers, a report of the plan that Ridgecrest has. Every city is supposed to have an emergency plan, and that lists among so many other things as food availability, which there is a 3-week supply in that city of Ridgecrest of food and water if everything is turned off. So if 3 weeks goes by without any help, you could see that people are going to be living off of their cans and whatever food they have in their cupboards, or hopefully stored up for emergency. So, and I don't know if I could make any kind of a judgment call on what kind of grade does Ridgecrest or that county have in reacting to this disaster, if it's a B, a C, or D, but everything is still being assessed, and I haven't seen anybody making any judgment calls or anything, but I think they're doing very well. Los Angeles is sending a lot of things, and it's they're freely able to travel between Los Angeles and Ridgecrest. It's just Trona, which is a very difficult area to get into right now. So the worst of situations happened in this situation. So I have various things that I wrote down, and again, after this broadcast, I'm going to have links for people to reference on this. So in addition to being on the route from Death Valley, the lowest point in the United States, to Mount Whitney, the highest point in the continental United States, the area of Trona is also home to the famous Trona Pinnacles. The Trona Pinnacles is where the classic TV series Lost in Space was filmed. I've even got photos, real nice photos, from when I lived there and when I traveled back. I've got family there. I've got 2 brothers that live there, and I haven't been able to get a hold of them. They're difficult to get a hold of, so I'm just praying that they're okay. And of course, most likely they are okay, because there hasn't been any major injuries. There has been no deaths in this 7.1. And I know what earthquakes feel like. When I was living there, I felt a couple of Los Angeles ones, the famous ones, the La Prieta and the, I can't think of the name right now, but in the past 20 years, 25 years, I felt both of them. And it felt like, the way I described it, was being on a skateboard going downhill and the skateboard starts to wobble. If you've ever been on a wobbling skateboard, or standing on a bowl of Jello, that's what it felt like. So imagine and feeling that for 20 seconds or so. This 7.1 that happened yesterday was roughly 20 seconds long, and that is a long time. And a 7.1, I've never been in a 7.1, but this fault line, you figure this is the way one of the Geological Society executives described it. The California San Andreas Fault goes at this kind of type of an angle, and you have a whole bunch of little faults going down. Well, this other fault is going the opposite direction, along with the many others across the state. But this is a new fault line, and according to a Los Angeles Times article, it's a 10-mile long fault, and it just opened up. Where is that fault located? Guess what is part many hundreds of square miles of that region, right next to Trona and right next to Ridgecrest? It's China Lake Naval Air Station. It's one of the most secretive bases, military bases in the United States. Well, that fault line is in a, as described by this Geological Society person, it's in a remote area of the China Lake Naval Air Base. So we'll be hearing, hopefully, no more large earthquakes as a result of that. But as it is in California, you never know when or where the big one is going to happen. I actually did a blog on earthquakes, and I'll post a link to that too, which I did a lot of research. I believe I did that blog in 2011, and it gets a lot of hits. It's got hundreds, thousands of hits already over the past few years. Every time there's an earthquake, a notable earthquake in California, I get a lot of hits on that one. So I'll post that link also. So the area is also home to the famous Trona Pinnacles. Their main sheriff station is in Barstow, but Trona has a resident outpost station there too, and they work along with agencies including, and not limited to, the California Highway Patrol, Ridgecrest Police Department, Kern and Inyo counties sheriff's offices. And it's like a tri-county area. There's Inyo County, there's Kern County, and there's San Bernardino County. Inyo County Sheriff's Office, State Fish and Game, Bureau of Land Management, China Lake Police Department, State Parole, and the Park Service from Death Valley, to successfully handle the many tasks needed to keep the area safe. Death Valley is approximately 70 miles down the highway, as I noted. So I want to give the Sheriff's Department in Trona a kudos, and the Fire Department, and there are regular citizens who are going where I don't know. Well, you know, there are ways that you could get around the road if you have the correct vehicles. So they're going to areas further than what Ridgecrest is, and getting bottled water in their trucks, and they're delivering them to people free of charge. There's a lot of people doing great things through local churches in that town. So things are not grim for Trona as far as I could see from scouring the internet. So I'm happy that Trona is being taken care of. When I lived there, I've got family that's been there since the 1980s, and they've lived there for 20 years and more before they moved. So the last of the people in that area in my family are my two brothers, which are in Ridgecrest. So from living there, there has always been a sort of a rivalry between Trona residents and Ridgecrest residents, and for this reasons that this would be classical of. They had a very rough time yesterday getting aid into that town, but they made do with what they had, and they did very well. Other than that, it's a nice area if you could afford to live there and be able to afford the wilderness trips. In between those three counties, there's Lake Isabella, there's Mount Whitney, Mammoth, skiing, snowboarding, green forests, high elevations, low elevations, lakes, boating, hiking, camping, and there's everything. Every kind of region that you can think of is between those three counties, and each one of those counties has it's just amazing. There's a lot of things about California that people don't realize that is awesome and wonderful. So keep California in prayer. I'm going to go to the best article from the Los Angeles Times titled "No Deaths." Reported in the 7.1 magnitude earthquake that struck Southern California. And I'm going to read this because there's pertinent information here that you could refer to. The 7.1 magnitude earthquake that rocked Southern California on Friday night rattled buildings, fractured roadways, and left residents on edge, but did not cause any fatalities or major injuries, officials said. California's second major earthquake in less than 2 days struck near Ridgecrest, a Mojave Desert town about 125 miles northeast of Los Angeles. And from where I am, it's 200 miles. The same area was rattled by a magnitude 6.4 earthquake, the largest in nearly 2 decades, on the morning of July 4th, which is Independence Day. The Friday night earthquake was about 10 times larger, seismologists said. Shaking was felt far away as Phoenix, Arizona, Las Vegas, Nevada, Baja California, Mexico, and Reno, Nevada, according to crowdsourced data on the U.S. Geological Survey. And I'll have this link, and then within this article, there are other links that you could use. So you don't have to use your cell phone to be scouring everything. The easiest way is to use links that are in a newspaper article. As the sun rose Saturday, which was this morning, officials fanned out across the remote high desert towns of Ridgecrest and Trona to determine the extent of the damage. Getting details overnight was a challenge, as I mentioned to you, it was a challenge for me. Officials said, particularly because power had been temporarily knocked out to much of the sparsely populated area. The earthquake sparked some fires, gas leaks, and damaged walls, but there were no initial reports of any deaths or serious injuries, officials said. We do feel like there's damage, said Kern County Fire Chief David Witt at a Saturday morning news conference, but we don't know the extent of it yet. So when you hear Kern County, that would be Ridgecrest. If you hear San Bernardino County, that would refer to Trona. And there are other area towns. One person on Facebook, I forget the name of the small town, but it's near Lake Isabella. She said that she heard horses squealing and little critters squealing in the fields. If that doesn't make you want to choke up, it's sad to just think of the little critters the squealing during it was a long earthquake. It was a hard earthquake. Enough to make critters frightened. So we do feel like there's damage, said Kern County Fire Chief David Witt at a Saturday morning news conference, but we don't know the extent of it yet. Los Angeles, more than 100 miles south of the epicenter, did not have any initial reports of major damage to buildings or other infrastructure. And Tehachapi is also nearby. Tehachapi is a high level. And so just go to your map and look at the local areas. The violent shaking sent residents in Trona and Ridgecrest running outside as light fixtures swayed and books, bottles, and pans crashed to the floor. Some spent the night sleeping in their cars or in camper vans. Others fled. After the 6.41 on Independence Day, a lot of people left. My kids keep asking me, what am I going to do, said Ronnie Tolbert, 60, who used a flashlight before sunrise Saturday to find her way through her home. I said, I don't know. And that is another tearjerker. Tolbert said she raised 11 children in her home of 32 years in Trona. During the shaking, the fireplace collapsed, leaving bricks scattered across her living room floor. The ceiling tiles in one room had all fallen, and the windows had shattered. The floors were filled with magazines and books, bottles, and food. After the earthquake, which struck at about 8:20 p.m., and that's last night, Tolbert and her husband pulled their mattresses onto the front yard to try to sleep. Her daughter rested in a truck parked on the street. Her grandson and his friends sprawled on mattresses across the road. The frequent aftershocks and the persistent anxiety that another big quake would soon hit made it impossible to get any rest. Many residents of Trona, home to about 1,900 people, slept in their driveways or on the street in camper vans or on mattresses. And residents in Ridgecrest did the same thing. People were sleeping on the sidewalks, neighbors hanging out with each other, sleeping in yards and the sidewalks because they were afraid to be inside the home during a devastating earthquake. The frequent aftershocks and persistent anxiety that another big quake would soon hit, it made it impossible to get rest for so many people. It has been 2 decades since the residents of the area felt such a major earthquake. A 5.8 magnitude quake rocked Ridgecrest, home to about 30,000 people in 1995. That's one of them that I felt. A 7.1 quake struck the Hector Mine area of the Mojave Desert about 100 miles to the southeast in 1999. And in 1999, I was living in Oregon. I was there for a few years, so I didn't get that one. The earliest one that I remember was the Loma Prieta one.